In 1989, the United States Navy admitted it had lost a 1-megaton hydrogen bomb in the Pacific Ocean and had lied about where it fell. The bomb had been on the ocean floor for 24 years. The pilot who went down with it had been on the ocean floor for 24 years. And the country whose coastline was 68 miles from the drop point had not been told it happened. That country was Japan. The weapon is still down there. The pilot is still in the cockpit. And in 60 years, nobody has sent a single camera to the bottom to check on either of them. What I could not get past was the distance. Not the depth, not the classification, not the cover-up. The distance. 68 miles from the only country on Earth that has been attacked with nuclear weapons, and the United States chose not to say a word. I checked this against the original Department of Defense filing because the math sounded made up. It was not made up. It was worse than I thought. The weapon that fell into the Philippine Sea that afternoon was a B-43 thermonuclear gravity bomb. It was designed at Los Alamos National Laboratory and entered service in April of 1961. The B-43 was built in 2 variants with 5 yield options, ranging from 70 kilotons at the low end to 1 megaton at the high end. 1 megaton is roughly 70 times the yield of the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. The weapon aboard the Ticonderoga that day was set to the highest configuration. An eyewitness who loaded the bomb later told the United States Naval Institute that when the weapon was brought out, the crew saw the symbol Y1 on the casing. Y1 meant 1 megaton. The B-43 contained a plutonium primary, the fission core that triggers the fusion stage. Plutonium-239 has a half-life of 24,100 years. The weapon casing was military-grade steel and aluminum, designed to survive a supersonic dive toward a target at 300 feet. It was not designed to survive 60 years of salt water at 16,000 feet of pressure. 2,000 B-43 weapons were built before production ended in 1965. They were carried aboard Navy attack jets on carriers across the Pacific throughout the Cold War. The Ticonderoga was carrying several of them when this one went over the side. Philippine Sea, December the 5th, 1965. The USS Ticonderoga CVA-14 was an Essex-class attack carrier, commissioned in May of 1944. She survived kamikaze strikes off Formosa, and she served in Korea. By 1965, she was on her second combat deployment to Vietnam, flying strikes off Yankee Station in the Tonkin Gulf. At the end of November, the Ticonderoga was relieved of duty in the Gulf, with orders to Yokosuka, Japan, for maintenance and crew rest. While in transit, the commanding officer, Captain Robert Miller, authorized a nuclear weapons loading exercise. On Sunday, December the 5th, at approximately 2:15 in the afternoon, a loading crew in Hangar Bay No. 2 assembled around an A-4E Skyhawk from Attack Squadron 56. The aircraft, Bureau No. 151022, was to be loaded with a B-43 and then pushed onto the No. 2 deck edge elevator for transfer to the flight deck. Lieutenant Junior Grade Douglas Webster climbed into the cockpit. Webster was from Ohio. He was newly married. He had 17 combat missions under his belt. The crew loaded the weapon, locked it into the bomb rack, adjusted the sway braces, and withdrew. Webster began his pre-flight inspection. Then the aircraft was pushed toward the elevator. This is the part that stopped me the first time I read the Board of Inquiry testimony. What happened next was not a combat loss. It was not a malfunction in the air. It was not an enemy attack. An aircraft carrying a 1-megaton hydrogen bomb rolled off the side of a ship. During the transfer from hangar to elevator, the A-4 rolled backward. Crew on deck blew whistles and waved at Webster to brake. According to testimony, the pilot seemed to be looking down and did not respond. The Skyhawk went over the edge of the elevator and fell inverted into the Philippine Sea. Webster, the aircraft, and the 1-megaton B-43 went into the water together. The ship stopped. A recovery helicopter circled the impact site. The destroyers Gridley and Turner Joy searched for hours. They recovered Webster's flight helmet, nothing else. The water beneath the Ticonderoga at the drop point was approximately 16,000 feet deep, nearly 5,000 meters, deeper than the Titanic, deeper than the Bismarck. The aircraft, the weapon, and the pilot settled on the abyssal plain and have been there ever since. The Ticonderoga continued her transit to Yokosuka. She arrived in Japan carrying nuclear weapons, docking at a port less than 70 miles from the point where one of those weapons was now sitting on the ocean floor. Japan was not informed. The incident was classified. The crew was ordered not to discuss it. Webster's family was told he had been lost at sea. They were not told what he had been carrying. For the next 2 decades, the loss of a 1-megaton thermonuclear weapon off the Japanese coast did not appear in any public document accessible to Congress, to Japan, or to the international community. The Ticonderoga went on to fly more combat missions over Vietnam. She recovered Apollo astronauts. She was decommissioned in September 1973 and eventually scrapped. The ship that lost the bomb lived a full career and was cut apart for steel. The bomb she lost never moved. 2 years after the incident, in December of 1967, Japanese Prime Minister Eisaku Sato stood before the Diet and articulated what became known as the 3 non-nuclear principles. Japan would not possess nuclear weapons. Japan would not produce nuclear weapons. Japan would not permit nuclear weapons to be introduced into Japanese territory. The Diet formally adopted the resolution in 1971. Sato won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1974, in part for this declaration. The entire time, a 1-megaton American hydrogen bomb was sitting on the seabed 68 miles from Japanese soil. Nobody in the Japanese government knew it was there. If you enjoy this content and want to see more, subscribe. The next one is already in research. The admission, when it finally came in 2 stages. In the early 1980s, the Department of Defense published a summary list of nuclear weapons accidents it called broken arrows. The Ticonderoga incident appeared as a single paragraph. It gave the date, it gave the weapon type, and it gave the location as more than 500 miles from land. 500 miles from land would have placed the drop point in open ocean, far from any sovereign territory and far from any diplomatic consequence. In 1989, arms control analyst William Arkin published the actual coordinates. The bomb had fallen approximately 68 miles from Kikai Island, part of the Ryukyu chain in Kagoshima Prefecture, Japan, not 500 miles, 68. The Navy had admitted losing the weapon, and inside the admission, it had buried the one detail that mattered most. When the corrected distance became public, the Japanese government demanded an explanation. The United States confirmed the loss and confirmed that no recovery had ever been attempted. The diplomatic fallout was immediate and sustained. I am not saying anyone is covering anything up today. The broken arrow filing is public. The corrected distance is public. Arkin's reporting is public. What I am saying is that the United States government lost a nuclear weapon 68 miles from the only country ever attacked with nuclear weapons. And then, when it finally told the world, it said the distance was 500. The 500 was not a rounding error. It was a choice. No government, no private expedition, and no scientific survey has publicly reported visiting the site in 60 years. The depth, 16,000 feet, is within the operational range of modern deep-sea vehicles. The research vessel Petrel found the Akagi at 17,000 feet. The Titanic has been visited dozens of times at 12,500 feet. The technology to reach the bomb exists. The will to use it does not. If you have watched the K299 video on this channel, you have seen what happens when a nuclear weapon sits on the ocean floor with no monitoring and no published data for decades. K299 has 30 warheads at 6,000 meters with zero public survey in 40 years. The Ticonderoga's B-43 has been down there even longer, 60 years, same ocean, same silence. The plutonium inside the weapon does not degrade. Its half-life is 24,100 years. The containment around it does degrade. The steel corrodes. The aluminum corrodes. The conventional explosive components absorb water and change. No public assessment exists that characterizes the current state of the weapon. I am not saying it is leaking. I am not saying it is dangerous today. I am saying that in 60 years, nobody has published a single data point that would answer either question. That is the point. The USS Ticonderoga was commissioned in 1944 to help win a war. She survived kamikazes, flew combat over 3 continents, and pulled astronauts out of the ocean. She was decommissioned in 1973 and scrapped. The ship is gone. The bomb she dropped is not. Lieutenant Junior Grade Douglas Webster was 25 years old, from Ohio, newly married, with 17 combat missions behind him. He climbed into the cockpit on a Sunday afternoon for a routine exercise and never climbed out. His helmet was recovered. He was not. He is still in the aircraft. The aircraft is still on the floor of the Philippine Sea, and the 1 megaton hydrogen bomb he was carrying is still mounted beneath him. 60 years, 16,000 feet down, 68 miles from Japan. Nobody is going down. Nobody is checking. Nobody has ever checked. Drop the next ship or file in the comments. Subscribe if you want to be there for the next one. See you next time.